Greetings to all of you damned viewers out there, and welcome to Movie Hell! If this is the first time your accursed soul has ventured into the warm glow of my little corner of the eternal abyss, allow me to elucidate you about our situation. Just as the souls of the wretched are contained here in the unending darkness, so too are the films who flopped, bombed, or, gasp, went straight to streaming. I am the Film Reaper, collector of cursed cinema, finder of failed films, and master of morbid media. I am directed by the Dark One to gather these so-called flops for the continued torment of the damned. And to further the anguish, films are only available in the most fickle, fuzzy, and fiendish format yet fabricated, the VHS tape. While it is true that most of the films in my collection offer unending hours of excruciating agony, there is no shortage of truly entertaining films that were broadly rejected by the bleating bloodbags who dominate the surface. On this very day, I am in the process of selecting 666 of my favorite films for the annual Movie Hell Halloween Movie Marathon. Now I understand that for those of you who have not yet fallen into the pit of unending darkness, where the dragon's hunger is never quenched, 666 movies might be more than you generally have time for, so I have arduously narrowed down my list to the 6 films from Hell's own collection, perfect for your Halloween movie marathons. Halloween is an exciting time around here. As the veil between my world and yours begins to thin, many of the ghouls and demons who are trapped in the netherworld venture forth to mingle with the bipedal sheep and swine, to taste whatever fetid slop has been deposited in the nearest trough. And while on the surface a few of my brethren may claim a soul or two, this has understandably caused a few in the mortal world to fear our attempts to socialize. Hundreds of years ago, they began donning costumes so that my kind would not notice them. Then they made decorative effigies with carved pumpkin heads, which, honestly, you know what? That did fool us for a few years. That was on us. You know, nothing sadder than a malicious sprite returning from the surface with what he assumed was a particularly ugly child, only to have to break the news to him, but sorry, what you have there is actually a very unappetizing vegetable. Though the underworld did eventually catch up, pumpkins have been one of the things most associated with Halloween ever since, which makes Pumpkinhead a natural and obvious inclusion in any Halloween watch party, especially if you're a particular fan of 1980s creature features. The hero of many of those flicks was special effects legend Stan Winston, who brought to life the unholy trilogy of The Aliens, The Terminator, and The Predator. When Winston was asked to bring the vengeance demon Pumpkinhead to life, he did more than sign on, he directed it. When a group of idiotic city kids accidentally kill Ed Harley's only son, he seeks the help of an old hill witch named Haggis to help him conjure the vengeance demon the locals call Pumpkinhead. But what's that old saying about those who seek revenge needing to dig 2 graves? Well, in this movie it should be way more, because Pumpkinhead is going to kill a lot of deserving teens. And Winston's team makes sure the creature is lavished with eerie lighting and ample fog in each beautifully executed sequence. Sure, the creature may look like Stan just wrapped one of his alien designs in human flesh, but that concept is so great they eventually used it in the 4th Alien movie. But none of that would work if not for the terrific performance from Lance Henriksen as Ed. He grounds the emotional core of the film with a portrayal filled with tender affection and righteous anger. Unfortunately, the producers of Pumpkinhead did not see the potential of the film, so they fiddled with the edit and held it for a year before finally dumping it out in a limited release that barely made back the reported $3 million budget. But like so many movies of the time, it found its fans at the video store, where it has since become a beloved creature feature classic. I know that for some, no Halloween movie marathon is complete without a classic slasher, and fortunately for our purposes, one of the greatest slashers ever made, starring one of the most iconic characters of the genre, did very poorly at the box office. Wes Craven's New Nightmare is a 1994 remix of the original film released in celebration of the 10-year anniversary of the original Nightmare on Elm Street. The plot is a labyrinth of meta-storytelling that follows Heather Langenkamp as she is pressured by various members of the Freddy family into reprising her role as Nancy for a new Nightmare film. Freddy himself, Robert Englund, appears not only as a fictionalized version of himself, but also as the campy, funny Freddy the character had become by the early 90s, and then as an even more sinister demonic entity that is taking the form of Freddy Krueger to infiltrate the, quote, real world. The film deals with so many interesting ideas about horror as a genre, where these stories come from, and what responsibilities they carry. My personal favorite moment is when director Wes Craven explains to Heather how horror allows people to capture their fears, contain them in the boundary of a story as a way of dealing with, processing, and then eventually defeating those fears. Unfortunately, this existential take on Freddy did not resonate with audiences, who likely just wanted more of the funny Freddy puns and crazy kills. Or maybe after several films, fans were tired of Freddy's whole routine. Whatever the reason, meta-horror would become fertile ground for Craven as he revitalized the dying slasher genre with 1996's Scream. New Nightmare can be seen as an especially big influence on Scream 3, where just as Nancy before her, Sidney Prescott ventures into the wilds of LA for the filming of an in-universe Scream-inspired stab film. I feel that it is important to remind my viewers that I am an immortal spirit who, along with my siblings, have existed for as long as you over-evolved apes have wrestled with the very concept of death. My corporal form is bound only by human imagination, and exists only so that the humming gray phlegm that resides within your skull does not combust in my mere presence. So it should go without saying that I have never had what has become known as a period. But I would imagine that if at the most awkward and self-conscious interval of my development I began to periodically bleed, well, that might make me feel rather monstrous. And that is the very premise of 2000's Ginger Snaps, written by Karen Walton and directed by John Fawcett. Ginger Snaps follows sisters played by Emily Perkins and Katherine Isbell, who live in a late 90s goth isolation from the cropped-topped and frosted-tipped normals at their local high school. When Ginger is attacked by a large, hairy beast, her body goes through a strange change that causes her to grow hair in new places, and she begins to have strange urges, and of course, there's a lot of blood. The real miracle of Ginger Snaps is that it took 4,000 years of werewolf stories before someone tied a woman's menstrual cycle to the werewolf's lunar cycle. I mean, the word menstrual even comes from the Greek term for moon. This is why it's so important to let half the population participate in storytelling, because you get totally badass funny werewolf movies like Ginger Snaps. Anyways, the movie was filmed and released in Canada, which, you know what, good for them. But it only came to the rest of the world on tape and disc. It eventually proved popular enough for a sequel that, without giving too much away, follows in the original's aftermath. There is even a third movie, which is basically just the same creative team making an alternative universe fanfic of their own movie, which I can't help but find endearing. Ty West has been experiencing a career renaissance recently with his trilogy of Mia Goth vehicles. But as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't get any better than 2009's The House of the Devil. This lovingly crafted pastiche to the horror vibes of the late 70s and early 80s is one of the most convincing homages I've ever seen. Starring Jocelyn Donahue as a college student desperate for money who gets more than she bargained for when answering an advert placed by horror icon Tom Noonan. Also, current Hollywood It director Greta Gerwig plays the sensible and suspicious best friend. This is another film that didn't technically bomb as it went straight to streaming before a very limited theatrical release, but as a prime example of slow burn horror with exquisite vibes, I hope fans of Pearl and Maxine look deeper into West's catalog. If you're the kind of sadistic weirdo who spends their free time watching me play old VHS tapes in my basement, straight from the smoldering bowels of hell itself. Then have I got a perfect movie for you. The WNUF Halloween special is a found-footage horror film masquerading as a bootleg copy of a local news program's Halloween night broadcast. Writer and director Chris LaMartina packs the film with 80s-era commercial breaks and other fun tidbits that are so accurate you will legitimately fear for the well-being of reporter Frank Stewart, played with everyman gusto by Paul Fahrenkoff. The WNUF Halloween special also plays as delightful counter-programming to James Wan's The Conjuring series, which has done a considerable amount to whitewash the reputation of those detestable scammers Ed and Lorraine Warren. Listen, I've consulted just about everyone down here, and none of them have ever had run-ins with the Warrens. Honestly, Lewis and Claire Berger, played by Brian St. August and Helen Mary Ball, seem just as worthy of their own interconnected Warner Brothers cinematic universe as the Warrens. The final film in our list embodies everything great about Halloween. It's scary, funny, and even a little bit sexy. Trick or Treat is an interlocking anthology series written and directed by Michael Dougherty. All the segments take place in one town over the course of a single Halloween, where nothing is quite what it seems. Each vignette is concerned with the importance of following certain Halloween traditions, and the little freak who is charged with enforcing these customs is our new king of Halloween, Sam. Sam appears to be a small child in orange footy jammies and a burlap mask. He began life as a short student animated film by Dougherty before becoming the glue that holds Trick or Treat together. And in doing so, Sam became the kind of horror icon Halloween has always needed. Someone who could go up against Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny. I mean, the Great Pumpkin doesn't exist, and Jack Skellington's only appearance is in a Christmas movie. Yes, I went there. Unfortunately, whoever was making decisions at Warner Brothers at the time was too busy releasing as many Batman and Harry Potter films as possible to fit Trick or Treat into their release schedule. So the movie was shelved for years before being unceremoniously dumped straight to video in 2009 after only a few convention screenings. But horror fans did what they always do and refused to let a quality film die, which would warm my heart if I had one. I mean, it's not like rom-com fans are out there compiling lists of the most overlooked films of the 90s or holding conventions where they all get together and compete to see who can champion the most obscure rom-com among them. I mean, that's what makes horror and horror fans special. And as a special treat to horror fans, I will be sending a shipment of tapes directly from the undulating mass of fire and hate at the very core of hell itself and straight into your VCR. All you must do is comment below with your favorite Halloween horror movie, and I will randomly pick one comment and unveil the winner at the beginning of my next video. Thanks for watching, and see you in hell!